for fast, cheap, and reliable Madden 21 Ultimate Team coins. Make sure you guys go check out my sponsor, Easy Mutt. Use code VENOM at checkout for 5% off. Yo, what's up guys, VenomFire here, back with a video, and today me bringing you guys another pro player scheme. This one's going to be CleffTheGod's Gun Trips tight end offset that he ran during that Draft Champions tournament. Overall, I think it's a really good, unique scheme with some really underrated, cool, unique route combos that are pretty effective. And of course, the pro scene has been pretty slow recently, so I don't have a lot of clips. I know you guys do love these videos, so of course it's tough for me to get new footage, especially when there's no tournaments going on, but I brought back an old one going back to this Draft Champions tournament, and I'm going to bring one of my, I think it is my first Clef scheme of the year. Of course, all of these clips are taken from the games that he plays. None are taken from an ebook. I don't buy anybody's ebook and repost it or anything like that. I just watch the games like you can, take some setups, and bring them to you guys. But like I said, we're going to be in the Trips tight end offset. In that game, he was in the Tennessee Titans playbook. Of course, Trips tight end offset is in Packers, it's in Jets, it's in a lot of other playbooks as well. I think it's in Texans. And overall, I'm going to bring you guys a lot of good passing plays. There's a lot of good run plays as well. The passing plays I'm going to talk about are going to be PA crossers, flood, levels Y sail, as well as X under. And the running plays are going to be inside zone and 0-1 trap, or this RPO trap alert bubble. We'll start out with the passes, and then we're going into the runs a little bit later. Also, before we get into the video, make sure you guys do go ahead, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 17,000 subscribers, so if you enjoy the content, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It's free, and you can always unsubscribe at any time. But moving on, we're going to be, once again, going over these passes first. The written version of this will be down below in the comment section, so you can check that out as well. Now, I'm going to start out with PA crossers. It is the main play of his entire offense, the play that he did run the most. So we're going to run PA crossers. We got a lot of setup for those. As I mentioned, we're going to start out with all these passing plays, and yeah, let's just get straight into it. I'm going to focus more so on offense in this video, just try to get through these setups as quickly as I can. So we're not going to really be changing around defense. I don't even have my user set up on defense. We're just going to run some like stock cover 3, and I'll show the setups. Of course, some of them will work against man. Although mainly these are some zone coverage beaters. Of course, I'm not going to be using any really special abilities, any hot route abilities, anything like that. So we're mainly just going to be using the stuff that we have and kind of going from there. So starting out with PA crossers, if you're looking at the written version, you see that is the most popular play that he ran. And for the first setup, we're going to go with, basically, we're going to run a lot of the same concepts out of it. We're going to change a route here, change a route there. But for our first setup, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to streak Y, I'm going to drag X, delay fade A, and I'm going to block my running back. So this is a concept you see him go to a lot, both in that Dreamy game and in that Dusty game of that Draft Champions tournament. You'll see him just go to this setup a ton. And it's a pretty good setup, especially for Draft Champions. And this crosser is really good. It gets over the top of pretty much every single zone. Even if you have your zone drop set to around 20, I think the crosser can get over the top. You have a nice little clear out. You want to snap the clear out around in the slot. And then, of course, if nothing's open with this first setup, you have your delay fade. So it gives you some good options. Of course, you have that drag in the middle of the field. Overall, it gives you some great options. If they do end up setting like a zone blitz, you can actually throw Y sometimes in between there. Of course, you can kind of roll out here, and then you release A, and then you can actually throw that delay fade. Now, that was a bad animation on the release, but that's certainly an option. We will be going back to that delay fade. But yeah, so a lot of the setups are similar. I'm not going to spend too much time on each one because you're changing around here, changing around there. So I'll show one more time here, and then we will go back. Now, of course, this is just a pretty solid play. It's going to be good if people send pressure. You have your 7-man protection, but you also have a threat of vertical. I have a threat just right here in the middle with Devontae Adams. I can pretty much throw every single time. You have to force the user to either go over the top or underneath. And then, of course, if he's too far out, you can throw that delay fade just on the back side. So let's move into our second setup for this. What we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and drag Y. We're going to curl RB. I'm also going to drag X for this setup. And then I'm going to either block A or put a delay fade. Now, if I ever say block A, or if it says block A in the written version, you can always delay fade A if you want to. It's not too big of a deal. And if you just want him to block, don't release him. Pretty simple right there. Now, for this setup, you're going to motion Y. And this is just a pretty solid setup. You just have dual drags. Again, it's pretty decent at spreading the field. Of course, right there, you see X getting wide open. The crosser, now you don't have a clear out, so it's not going to be as good of a crosser, but you still have a threat, of course, throwing other things. And this also does a pretty good job of all of these kind of go hand in hand in the look. So you're going to motion Y. Even on the runs, we'll motion those receivers that we continue to do and make every look pretty much look the exact same. Of course, certain coverages this will be better against. Man coverage is going to be pretty solid as well. Now it's mainly a kind of a quick snap type of a play, so I want to throw it. I can throw it to Y right there. If I wait, which I could, you're going to have decent protection. Then, of course, you can hit things late as well there. So, again, block A, block your running back as well. Or actually not block your running back, but you know what I mean, curl your running back. Something like this. Now, of course, it's going to be ideal to try and get out of the pocket and throw this crosser. So I'm just going to try and roll out here. There you see, you can throw the crosser and it gets open. Of course, I have the drag over there. If for some reason he sleeps on that left side, we can throw the backside drag as well. So let's move into our third setup. Our third setup, once again, we're going to be streaking Y. I'm going to curl RB again, drag X. For this one, we're again going to block our tight end or delay fade. Basically, we're just going to change Y's route here. So instead of the drag, he is now on a streak. This is going to open up the crosser more. And this is the same thing as the first setup. Really, the biggest difference is that we have a little curl in the middle of the field. So if I do roll out, not only do I have the delay fade threat, but I also have that little curl. So that might also make his user hesitate, stutter step in the middle of the field a little bit more. And again, it's just going to be a little bit of a difference that can make a difference, especially when you combine all these setups. You don't know what your opponent's necessarily going to be running. It's always good to have certain things like this. Right there, you see we got shedded right away by our tight end. If that happens, you can quickly release him as I did there and kind of quick throw it. One more time here, I'll set it up. Again, here's a look at the setup. Very similar concepts. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of these route combos are going to be almost the same. Just change a route here, change a route there. Again, I'm going to try and roll out here and throw that crosser on the run. Crosser is very, very good. Gets over the top of things. And it becomes even better with your clear out. So let's move into setup number 4 here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to, again, delay fade A. I'm going to streak Y. I'm going to actually put RB on this little route. So it's called an out left. It's pretty much an in route, but it's called an out left because he's technically running an out route to the left. But this is a pretty solid route combination. I think it's going to spread the field a little bit better. Once again, you're going to drag X, but instead of the curl, instead of congesting yourself with the drag and the curl in the same area, this is going to do a little bit of a better job of spreading the field. I could hit Aaron Jones right there, and you see I have enough space to pick up around 5+ yards, 7 yards, something like that. So it does give me a nice little threat. And of course, your opponent might not be looking for it. He could possibly not be manning up the tight or the running back, especially if he's on a curl route. There's not necessarily a need to. But it can also beat man coverage from that standpoint. Here you see the drag's going to get a little bit more space with Devontae Adams, so that's a little bit more of a threat, and it spreads the field a little bit better. Moving on to our last setup, setup number 5, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually streak A. We're going to drag A, drag Y, and then I'm just going to block my running back. So this is just, again, similar concepts. We went with that setup earlier where I dragged Y, dragged X, motioned over Y. This is kind of similar. Gives you a nice little threat. The tight end can beat man coverage in a drag route. Again, they could be sleeping on that left flat. They could just be playing over the top there, and that would be certainly an option you can do. And again, if you really wanted to, you could basically go with all these plays vice versa, where I could actually streak X and motion X over every single time. I think I do some motion with X in the other plays, which you will see. But really, if I wanted to, I could just be doing this with every single setup. I don't know what the difference would be. Maybe you like that drag a little bit further inside. Honestly, it doesn't make too big of a difference, but you see how it just gets there earlier. If that's a concern, if he's sending pressure, that's certainly an adjustment that you can make. Anyways, let's move into our next play, which is going to be X under. Now, we did only run this one time. I only have one setup, as you see in the written version, but it's a pretty solid setup. He did run it in that Dreamy game, I believe, and he picked up a pretty good gain. I think it was before the half, I want to say. But what you're going to do here is you're going to smart route Y. We have a really good corner out with Allen Lazard here. We're going to smart route Y. I'm going to curl X, streak B, and drag A. Also block my running back. So here's a look at the setup. I'm going to motion Devontae over. This is a really good spacing concept. You'll see right here that Allen Lazard, just from the slot, is going to get completely wide open. I don't know what it is about it, but you see how the streak, it's going to actually pull in the curl flat zone. And it just opens him up wide open. It's a really unique set of route combinations. Or set of routes, I should say. You see We have a good corner route with the receiver. We have a good tight end corner route. We have a flat table route. And even with Valdez-Scantling, we have a little deep post. So you could do some other things with it. In personal videos that I've ran this, I've talked about some other stuff, gameplays, things like that. I've definitely got creative with this play. So if you want to check that out, you can and potentially add to the scheme. But also, you have some other threats. I have the tight end drag that I can hit. And you see how the curl flat's almost in no man's land. He's not defending the corner out, nor is he defending our drag. So you can really throw that every single play if you wanted to. Of course, you have the middle of the field threat. And then you have the backside curl, which I'm going to try and throw here with Davante Adams. So again, it's a solid play. You can do a lot with it. Now, he didn't run it too much because, again, without abilities, you can't do a whole lot with it. But there you see the curl. Again, just by itself, the curl's not going to be super open, but that could be a threat in man coverage as well. So let's move into our next passing play, which is going to be flood here. With the flood play, what you want to do is you actually have RB already on the swing route. We're going to use that to our advantage. Some of the setups, he leaves the swing route, and some of the setups, he actually puts it on a wheel route. So you'll see in the written version, it says swing RB / wheel RB. That's pretty much what it means. But we're going to use a lot of these routes to our advantage. We have A on this little inside route. I'm not sure what to call that, but what I'm going to do pretty much for this first setup is I'm just going to slant B, streak Y, and smoke screen X. So here's a look at our setup. Just overall a solid, sound setup. You see how A, he shows up really short on his player, but he actually goes pretty deep. Overall, it's a pretty solid play in my opinion. Of course, late in the play situations, we can throw it to X. We can also throw it to RB straight off the bat if I wanted to. You see how he just gets in open space. You can make a guy miss, get in the open field just like that, make a couple of moves, and go crazy. Of course, if he's setting zone drops, he could be playing far over the top. Of course, it's not going to beat man coverage as well, but it is still a threat potentially against zone. And if he doesn't man him up, that could get open as well. So here's a look at the setup. Again, we got that slant that does get open. The swing does a decent job of pulling zones to the flat as well. So for the next setup out of flood, what we're going to do is we're going to create some motion. So you've seen out of flood and out of other plays, we want to continue the motion theme because we don't want him to catch up on some of our tendencies, some of our reads as an offensive player. So you want to make things look the same. That's what makes a good offensive player. Even if you have your favorite plays, you can catch people off guard pretty simply. For this setup, what we're going to do is run it pretty much like this. Of course, with RB, I can wheel him if I want to, but he's already on that swing, so we're going to leave him on that. For now, here's a look at the setup. What I like to do is motion Davante Adams over for this one. Now, he's already on a fade route. I just like to put him on a streak when I motion him over so we get a little bit of a cleaner thing. With what the streak does, it's going to open up the swing route a lot more. So it's going to clear things out. Potentially, if he sends heat, you can, again, quick snap throw that streak. I also have a hot read with RB, but same old against man coverage. Pretty much what the case would be is I can throw it to the slant, I can throw it to A, potentially X, but it's going to be difficult for him to use her, especially when he's focusing on other route combinations that we're hitting. This is just a solid play that can catch people off guard. So solid setup there. Let's move into our last one. And with our last setup, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, streak Y. X is already on a fade route there. And honestly, all I do for this one is just run it like this. This is a solid setup. He did run it a couple of times, usually like late in the half, but it's a decent job of stretching the field. I don't recommend this setup too much because you don't really have too much of a threat of anything, but potentially if he's sending heat at you, this could be a solid kind of hot read play. Again, you're streaking Y, B's already on a flat, and then you're really just snapping the ball. Again, I can wheel RB if I wanted to, something like this, but with B, he's going to be opened up a little bit. I would highly recommend running this against zone rather than man coverage. I think that's pretty obvious, though. But again, this is a setup he ran. I think he had decent success running it. Of course, something that could be a threat is kind of rolling out to the left side. Although in draft champions, a lot of times you're kind of throwing from the pocket, but you could potentially playmaker that B up, or you could take off with your quarterback. So that's it for flood. Again, it's a solid play. I thought we should mention it. Let's hop into levels sale here. Now with levels sale, we have, again, 3 setups. Our first setup is just going to be simple. We're just going to streak Y. And he actually leaves the tight end deep on this. Because, again, zone coverage, there's not really a reason to smart out it, especially when zones would play back and they're going to defend it. So for this first setup, all he did was just streak Y, snap the ball. You have your 2 in routes, of course. I can throw it to Davante. He gets opened up really solidly in that kind of slot position. That's where you want to throw it, around where the slot player lines up. But solid play. Of course, you have your table route. Zones are going to pick up on that pretty well, and that's why we have the corner out over the top. So overall, it's a solid play. I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's just a simple one adjustment play. I think he only ran this a couple of times, but moving into our next setup was pretty much just hitch B. So this is a look at it. It's not my favorite setup, but late in play situations, you can kind of hit B right there. I could read over to the right, and I still have a threat to the left, so it's not necessarily a flood concept because I still do have a threat sitting over there. Again, with this one, he didn't smart out A, so I can pass lead over, hit him on the sideline, something like that. Now, if it is man coverage, you probably do want to smart out A just to potentially get that man coverage beater, but this setup is pretty solid just stock against man coverage because I have X, I have Y as well. We get shedded there, but you understand what I'm saying. Anyways, let's move into our third setup with this. With level sail, our third setup, we're actually going to go ahead and smart out A. I'm going to slant B, streak Y, and smoke screen X. So here's a look at it. We're going to motion valve scaling over. This is just a pretty solid sound setup. You see with a lot of these, you have a clear out threat, so you can't just commit. You could hit Y in the slot right there. I love the streak to smoke screen concept because the outside thirds really can't play it, and so you have all the room in the world to kind of throw that. Of course, our slant's going to do a good job of pulling hook curl zones down, things like that. And it just gives us a couple of options. Again, I mentioned that it's going to be a lot of unique route combinations. Stuff like this can be pretty successful. Now, when you're smart routing A, you're not going to have as much space to make a read on that right-hand side. So zones can do a really good job of baiting. Be careful with throwing the ball in those particular situations because you could throw a pick. But overall, solid. I think if I wait on A, he should probably get over the top. Just pass lead right, and you see always open. So it doesn't make too big of a difference with A. I would recommend smart routing against man coverage, though, of course. And yeah, anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the runs now. Now, as I mentioned, the runs are going to be RPO, trap alert, bubble, and inside zone. He ran that counter once, so maybe an honorable mention, but I'm not going to show it. Now, RPO, trap alert, bubble. With this play, you can mix in some motion. I mentioned that earlier. With the runs, you want to mix in motion. Now, he actually runs a hitch, so you could potentially actually throw that if you wanted to, but you don't really have enough time to get it off anyways. But yeah, of course, the run's going to be a little bit better if you use some no motion. You can get to the outside and make a couple guys miss, pick up your easy 10 yards, as we did right there. Again, if I wanted to, I could also motion out X because some of the plays we motioned him out. He didn't really throw the RPO at all, so you can kind of ignore that right there. We just got shedded, but it's a solid run. You really need a good user to blow up something like a trap, and especially with all of the pass combinations that I showed you. If you run the ball as much as you want, he ran the ball a lot in his game, so I do recommend running this a heavy amount because that's just going to open up your passing plays even more. It's going to compress the box, and it's going to allow you to spread the field a little bit better. So you can motion out. You see it's a pretty good run formation that we're in, big nickel over G, but we're still picking up some solid blocks. Of course, you do have a threat to potentially get to the outside, as I guess our left guard's just not that good. He's just getting shedded to death right there. Even though I think he is a high overall. Maybe Maurice Hurst is just the best player in the game. But yeah, it's a solid run. Again, it can even be better against things like 3-3-5 wide, especially if they have a bad user, because this will eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Let's talk about inside zone. Inside zone, of course, the staple of any trips formation. Trey, Y, flex, trips, tight end itself. Inside zone is no different. Solid run. You can cut it back to the outside. Of course, I recommend using motion. And I'm not going to do as much justice to these runs because he used them a lot. I'm not going to talk about them for too much because there's not a whole lot to talk about with running plays or even just stock inside zones. Of course, you can run it stock. As geez, Maurice Hurst is going off right now, but you can run it stock. I recommend quick snapping it if you're just going to run it with no motion, just like this. But overall, it's a solid run. Again, this formation is pretty good to run the ball. And to make everything work, you do want to establish the run game. Keep him honest. You don't just want to run the ball twice. You get blown up, and I'm going away from it the rest of the game. You want to keep him honest. Run it a lot. Run it double-digit times a game is what I would say minimum. You want to run it at least 10 times a game. Give your running back a lot of carries. And that's just out of this formation. That doesn't include going to goal line, things like that. Now this formation is not super good with cutting it back, so you really would want to do some motion, get yourself some extra space over there. You really need like a good user to go like this, but you see how even it's difficult to get that safety blocked, and it depends formation to formation, but I do recommend just running it the traditional way. wait for the blocks to develop, and then you can kind of cut it back. So if you're going to stop and go, just kind of fake out the linebacker or whatever. Again, depends on the user, depends on a couple of things, but overall, you see the runs are pretty solid against a good running formation. Overall, that's going to do for the video. Let me know if you want to see any other pro schemes in the comments down below. Follow me on Twitter. Link will be down below in the description. Subscribe to the channel for more. Drop a like, turn on those post notifications, and peace. I'm out of here.